Today, I'm going to show you how I made this. The infamous Costco blanket underquilt. Oh crap! So this is it, and I'll show you how it fits on the slacker hammock now. Okay, the first thing you want to do is start by opening up the underquilt over your hammock to keep it clean. If you lay it out on the floor, then it's just going to attract dirt and moisture, and you can end up with problems with your underquilt getting damp and smelly. So I start by laying it out in my hammock so I can figure out which way it goes. Because on this particular underquilt, I've stitched tabs to fit on my Hennessy as well. I get the suspension loops. And clip them on one end. And then simply clip on the other end. And then bring it underneath the hammock. And then adjust it as necessary. Oh, that's comfy. Honestly, you can feel the warmth instantly. The difference between having the underquilt on or not having it on at all is massive. Just even on a fairly mild day like today, you can just feel the warmth of your body being thrown back at you and not disappearing out through the fabric of the hammock. So once you're in the hammock, you can really figure out where the underquilt needs to be. So the advantage of the bungee cords and the suspension system, the way I've got it on this webbing right the way along, means that it's literally just one toggle either side to adjust the suspension, and so you can experiment once you're in the hammock to see whereabouts you need your insulation. I like to have my feet just hooked up into the corner, and then you can just swing underneath and pull it up around your shoulder, and it's lovely. Making the underquilt is really quite simple, and I'll show you now how it's made. Just for size comparison before we start, this is the Costco blanket underquilt, and this is my UK hammocks underquilt. Quite a big size difference, as you can see. And although this is a lot warmer and great for winter use, you really don't want to be carrying something around like this around during the summer. This does go in a little compression sack when I take it out, but there's certainly room for this to be compressed further as well in a compressing bag if you really need to. It'll squash down really small. So let me show you how it's made. Right, first of all, you'll notice that the fabric of these double black diamond blankets have got a shiny side and a matte side. Now, I have the shiny side on the inside personally because I think it may reflect a little bit more heat back at you, but also I prefer the look of the matte side on the outside. So you start off by laying the blanket out, and on the shorter side you want to create your end baffles. Now, to do this, you want to just fold and pin the first square of fabric over to the seam, like that. And then when you're at the sewing machine, you just want to stitch along this edge to create your end baffle. This is where you'll thread your bungee cord through to make the hammock shape. So once you've sewn those on both sides, then what you need to do is create your side baffles. Now you can either do that after you've stitched your webbing along the edge, or you can do it beforehand. So the webbing that I use is a synthetic webbing. You don't want to be using a natural cotton webbing or anything like that, because that'll hold moisture. So you want to use like a polyester webbing. And it's available from most kind of fabric shops. You shouldn't really have too much trouble finding something like that. You don't want to use anything too heavy duty. It doesn't need to be climbing rated or anything like that, because the only weight it's taking is the weight of the underquilt. So it's not like it's bearing your weight or the weight of the hammock. But you want something that's easy to stitch. So you don't want anything too flimsy, because it would just become difficult to stitch onto the blanket. So unless you're really experienced with the sewing machine. So you want to stitch that right the way along the first stitch run, thread run. So you can then fold this over to create your baffle. So for something like the Slacker or even the Hennessy, as far as the width is concerned, you need to take up 2 squares. So you want to be doing that on both sides to create the right width. If you don't, what happens is, once you sling this up on the hammock, you end up with a little V in the middle. It's just too saggy, and then that's just going to fill with cold air, and it's just not going to do the job properly. So it might be worth measuring your hammock and see roughly how wide you need it to be, but for me, it works on both the Hennessy and the Slacker. I needed to take up 2 whole sections. Now there might be easier ways of doing it. Some people might cut it, get rid of that fabric, but for me, I find making a baffle on the side just is a lot easier, and also it just creates that little bit extra comfort and a little bit extra warmth just at the side. So you can see that the shape of the underquilt now has changed dramatically over the blanket. That's just by adding the bungee cord to these first baffles. So as I said, the first baffle that you want to make along the short end is this. And then what you want to do, if you can see that, focus. I just stitched some little webbing tabs on the inside here, so that I threaded the bungee cord all the way through that first baffle. You can see the stitch line there. So I threaded the bungee cord through the little loops, and then added a little adjustment toggle. And on the other side, again, another little webbing loop where I've threaded the bungee cord onto. So it just creates a really simple adjustment system. It's just one piece of really thin, lightweight bungee cord onto a toggle, so it's so easy to adjust. So then that helps create the right shape and also stops cold air from rushing in when it's up against your hammock. And because it's on bungee cord, it stretches and it just holds the shape nicely. So then onto the sides. This is the webbing that I stitched right along the edge, and I terminate with a couple of loops either end, and then this holds the bungee cord, which I then use to suspend this or clip this up onto the carabiner at each end of the hammock. It's really, really that easy. I mean, if you're proficient with a sewing machine, it shouldn't take you long at all. For me, I had to learn how to use a sewing machine. So there's a bit of a learning curve there. There's a few sections that aren't stitched quite as straight as they should be, but no, it's all part of the fun of learning how to do it, I suppose, and making your own kit. Certainly worth having a go, and for about £30, I don't know what that would be in dollars at the moment, probably about $50, $45, $50. I've got myself a really nice underquilt that works really well. And as you can see, I've got a couple of them, so I use this as a top quilt if I'm just kind of hanging around rather than sleeping overnight. If it's a little bit cool, I can just throw that over the top and have this underneath, and it actually creates a really a really good value hammock system. So yeah, have a go. That's how I made my my underquilt.